Welcome back. I graduated from college, University of Nebraska, in 1968. I had a degree in advertising and marketing, and I was in love with the airlines. I wanted to be in the marketing department of a major airline. So I started sending out letters along with applications and a resume to every airline in the United States, and there were a bunch of them back then. Allegheny, Eastern, Republic, Ozark, Air Florida, Air California, PSA, Texas International, Musair, Ozark, Western, all of those airlines, plus many more, Pan Am, United, TWA, American, and Northwest Orient. By the end of that summer, I had a binder this thick full of, thank you very much for your letter and your resume and your application, but we don't have any openings. There was a war going on, the Vietnam War to be more specific, and all of my friends were scared to death of it. I didn't have to go because I had polio when I was a little kid, and therefore I was classified 4F, unfit for military service. The other classifications were 1A, you're going, 2S, student deferment, which meant as long as you could hold a C average, you wouldn't be going to Vietnam. Well, I wasn't going anywhere but back to Hartington to help my dad mow greens at the golf course. So I did. And I was sitting around thinking, well, this isn't going to work out too well. What do I need to do to get a job? Where would I like to work would probably be a better question. Well, as a Nebraska kid, I love to hunt, and I specifically love to hunt pheasants. We used to have our boots in the car, and after school, we'd jump in the cars, grab our shotguns off the little rack behind the window, and head for the country to hunt pheasants for a few hours. And I'd thought about that for a little bit. I said, that'd work. Now I needed to decide who in that business I would like to work for. Well, my shotgun was a Remington 870, and I liked it. And I liked Remington products. So I thought, why not go to work for Remington, or at least try? So I said I needed a different approach. I was also a part-time commercial art student with the famous artist class in Westport, Connecticut. And I'd finished that, so I decided to illustrate a billboard. So I got a billboard about yay by yay, and I painted a picture of a hunter in a duck blind, and he's pulling up with his shotgun, and the trusty dog is looking out the side of the blind. There's ducks flying by, and it says, shoot the best, shoot Remington. And I went down to the hardware store and I got some balsa wood, and I made a little billboard, frame and all. Okay? And I bought 2 mouse traps, and I mounted the supports on the mouse trap. Then I glued the mouse traps into a shirt box, pushed the whole thing down, had my resume taped to the back of the billboard, and taped it shut. Then I called Remington. I said, who would be in charge of your advertising department? And they said, well, that would be Jack Mitchell. And where is Jack Mitchell? And he's in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So I addressed it up to Jack Mitchell, set the box off to Bridgeport. About 4 days later, my dad came out to the golf course and he said, you got a call from Remington Arms Company and they'd like to talk to you. So I went down to the garage and got on the phone and talked to them. They said, buy a ticket to New York and a Connecticut limousine ticket to Bridgeport. We'll pay you back for all that, and we'll interview you. I said, okay, great. So I bought the ticket. Off to New York I went, up to Bridgeport. A guy named Tony Konzerski picked me up, took me to the company office, which was up on a big bluff that overlooked Bridgeport. In fact, you could see Long Island Sound out there. There was this big undeveloped park. 700 acres of undeveloped land surrounded the Remington offices. Now, you folks who've been to the east, you know how tight everything is. So that big park stuck out like a sore thumb. And had a fenced drive up the hill going to the office, and along the fenced drive was a herd of deer. They were looking at you all the time. That was kind of funny, I thought. But anyway, I asked him, I said, what's this big undeveloped land all about? And he said, that's where we store the powder to make the shells. We got our own little train that comes up from the factory, picks up the powder, takes it down, they make the shells. So all the powder is stored in bunkers up here. Well, we got to the office, and I had 5 people I had to be interviewed by. First, of course, was Jack Mitchell. So I walked out to his office and walked in the door, and on the credenza behind his desk was my billboard. And he said, son, that's the most creative thing I've ever seen. That thing, I opened the box, that thing popped up, and the resume shot right by my ear. And I told Tony, I said, get him in here. I need to get him a job. So they made a place for me. I worked for Stan Hutchison in sales promotion. And boy, it's really buggy out here tonight. He taught me a lot in sales promotion. But everything in Remington's advertising followed 4 questions. Who's your prospect? What's your prospect's problem? What's your prospect's problem? What's your product? How do you break the boredom barrier? And since Remington was usually sold out in the 2nd month of the year for the entire year, that worked pretty good. In fact, Remington was the most profitable division of the DuPont Corporation, which owned them at the time. So, what I learned there, I'm going to teach you here. And we're going to start with question 1. Who's your prime prospect? And that follows the old 80-20 rule, which means 80% of your business is going to come through 20% of your customers. I really didn't care who bought Winchester guns when I worked at Remington. I care deeply about those folks that own 4 or 5 Remingtons and we're going to buy a 6th. That was our prime prospect, because they usually shot Remington and Peters ammunition. They were the best of the best. Okay, that's what you need to find. Who's your best of the best? Well, how do you go about that? There are 2 areas: demographics and psychographics. Demographics have to do with age, income, marital status, suburb, city, that kind of thing. Psychographics have to do with how they think and how they act. That might be conservative, liberal, drink beer, play golf, those kinds of considerations. You put the 2 together and see if you can develop a portrait of your best customer. And why do you need that? Well, as you develop this portrait of the customer, you're going to start buying media. And a lot of times the media salesman might come in and say, we got a heck of a deal on radio today. Let me sell you this package right here and it'll work great for you. And you look at him and you say, well, how many males between the ages of 25 and 45 who play golf on the weekend, like the NFL, and drink beer, listen to that particular bunch of radio that you want to sell me? All of a sudden, that radio rep is going to start working for you instead of working for himself. All right? So that's why it's important. Plus, you want this in front of people that are going to consider your offer. Now, I'm always going to say consider, because there's an ugly truth here. Advertising can't sell anything. They can get a person to consider your offer one time. And if they consider it, they either will go ahead and buy or they won't buy. So that's what the 4 questions are all about. The better we can nail things down, the better chance we have at how they'll consider things. Okay? So that's question number 1. We'll get on to question number 2 here very shortly. Bye.